Hey everyone, it is another beautiful day here. I don't know if you can hear the birds chirping, but it sounds really nice outside. Hopefully you can hear some of that. But what I wanted to do in today's video is go over the things that I'm planning to do differently in my garden this year compared to what I did last year. I thought it would be fun to share some of my ideas and thoughts. Doesn't always mean I will stick with them. I tend to sometimes go in with the plan and then ignore the plan when I actually start gardening, but hopefully I will stick to the majority of the things I plan to do this year. So first is, I feel like there's just going to be an overall shift of focus in my garden. So when I first got a lot of garden space, again around 2019, I grew a lot of vegetables and then just kind of random pots of flowers. But my focus was mainly more on vegetables. And over the years, I feel like I've gotten more and more interested in flowers and shifting away from the vegetables. I think that really started to happen last year because I tried so many new varieties of seeds that I'd never tried before and just fell in love with a bunch of new flowers. So this year I want to grow even more of the flowers that I fell in love with last year. The main varieties I'm growing types are zinnias, sunflowers, and a bunch of gomphrena, and then some other random flowers here and there. But there's definitely going to be more containers filled with flowers this year than there has been in the past. I'm still going to grow some vegetables. I still want to have like one tomato plant. I'm probably going to sow one okra plant, but it's pretty much going to be like one plant of each variety because again, I'm working with limited space in my garden, so I can't have everything that I want. So I think I'm going to have majority flowers, a few vegetables here and there, but I'm also going to grow more herbs than I did last year. I already did a video where I talk about the tea garden that I'm planning to grow. I've really been getting into tea, especially growing some new herbs last year and then being able to use them during the winter. Specifically chocolate mint was delicious. So I'm just super excited to try even more herbs this year in the garden, and then I can save and make a bunch of tea blends to get me through the winter when the garden is shut down. So I think that is something I'm definitely going to stick with because I already have the seeds for the flowers. A lot of the seeds started. I don't think, other than okra, which I will direct sow, I don't think I'm going to start any vegetables from seed because if I'm only going to grow one plant, it's much more cost and time effective to just go down to a garden center, find a variety that I like, and then plop it into a container. So that's going to be my plan this year. As far as some other changes, and I have on my list right here so I don't forget, in terms of more like the technical aspects of my garden, I'm going to grow all of my herbs in larger terracotta containers this year. Last year and all the previous years, I've grown them in much smaller white containers. I don't think I have any out here, but I think they're about a 6-inch diameter, and they did fine, but I think the majority of the herbs will love having a little bit larger of a container to grow in. So I'm going to use pots that are either, I think probably about 8 inches in diameter, and terracotta. I also think they just performed better. I think I had 1 or 2 in terracotta last year compared to the small plastic containers. Also, the extra weight from the terracotta containers help keep them in place because it can get windy up here. We're luckily not having a very windy day today. It is the Windy City, but all the plastic containers would fly off of the shelf that I have for my herbs when there was even like a slight breeze. So I'm hoping they will perform better and they will just do a lot better in the terracotta containers for this year. Some other more technical changes I'm making. I am not going to be growing any tall flowers in any of my highest raised beds. So I have 4 raised beds. 3 are the same height and one's a little bit lower. I forget the exact heights. But I had the giant zinnias last year in my center raised bed, which looked fantastic. But again, they did okay with wind in general, but we do get some extra strong winds just throughout the year. I mean, sometimes they'll even knock over trees on the streets, and there were definitely 3 or 4 times when I was very nervous that all of my zinnias would be knocked down when I came out. So my plan for this year is shorter flowers. I'd say probably nothing that gets more than like 18 to 24 inches in the tallest raised beds, and then the giant zinnias, anything that's going to get taller than that, is going to be in containers lower to the ground. There was a 30-gallon grow bag that I grew on accident a bunch of giant marigolds in. I think that's where I'm going to plant the giant zinnias this year. One of the other 30-gallon grow bags I'll do tomatoes. I'm looking at them right now over there. And then the other one I'll have another giant variety of zinnias in. So yeah, much lower to the ground, much more contained, much safer so that they don't get blown over and broken in the wind. Related to that, another thing I'm going to hopefully do differently this year is get everything trellis and staked ahead of time. that's always been an issue for me ever since I've started gardening, is I will plant stuff that I know needs to be staked, and I just don't do it until it's absolutely necessary. So that's why I end up sometimes with just twine wrapped around plants and tied to other random things, trying to keep everything upright, or using random pieces of metal or whatever I have lying around as a trellis. So I'm going to plan better this year. If you remember my greenhouse that was up here that unfortunately got blown away in the wind, there were metal pieces of that I saved in order to use to stake some of my plants. So I'm hoping, again, I will be more responsible this year and have all of that put into place, but we'll see how that goes. Other technical things, I want to get drip or some sort of self-watering mechanism set up to all of my containers, or at least all the containers that need it. So what I have right now is I have the Proven Winners drip kit that is connected to all of my raised beds and all of the very large grow bags, and then I think I had them going into some like random grow bags along the wall, but I still would say about half my containers, mostly the smaller ones, I didn't have any sort of drip system hooked up to, which was fine when I was here, but if we ever wanted to go away for a weekend, I would have to move all my pots into the shade, and then if we were gone long enough where we had somebody come over to check on our cats, they would come up and water the plants as well. But it would just be much more of an easy task if I could get all of that set up, and then that way we can leave and I won't have to worry about watering anything. So I don't know if I'm going to extend the Proven Winners kit to all of my pots, because I think if I could find some sort of self-watering type of mechanism, I haven't actually researched all of this yet, I've seen some things online, but if I could put something like into the pot that stores water for, I don't know, up to a week, and then that way I can do that and use it just throughout the entire time in my garden and make sure that's filled up before we go out of town for anything. So that is a plan that I feel like I will definitely do this year. I will be extending some of the drip system to larger containers, and I'll take you around once I turn that on and get that set up and extended, but it would be just such a relief to have everything set up on a drip system, watering on its own. The next thing is kind of changing the design in general. I mean, not a lot of change, but what I want to do is actually have some sort of design, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but last year and pretty much every year I kind of get carried away with, I will go somewhere, I'm sure you can relate, I will go somewhere, I will see a random plant, I will bring it home even if I'm not sure I have space for it, and I will plop it down in a random container somewhere. And even though that is very fun, I do want to have more of a cohesive look in my garden this year. So buying plants for a specific purpose, knowing where I'm going to place them in the garden. Again, will I be able to contain myself? We shall see, but that is something I want to focus on this year. And then kind of going along with that, I also want to use more vertical space in the garden. Obviously the elevated beds are fantastic for that because that is actually like 3 feet off the ground. Everything else is basically sitting on the ground. I would like to find some sort of like stands or hanging baskets and try to connect them somewhere so that I just have more of that vertical space used, more things that you can kind of see at different levels in the garden. I think that'll just help with the overall look of my garden. So still working again on trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to do that, but we shall see. And then the last thing I wanted to go over are just some things that I am no longer doing this year. I did do a video of some of the specific plants that I won't be growing this year, but this is just kind of non-plant related but still garden related. And the first is I'm not buying mulch. So last year was really the first year that I refreshed my raised beds. So I got compost, I got more soil, and then I thought I would get some mulch and use it in the garden because I thought it would make my pots and containers look prettier. But what I realized is that as soon as they all filled in, you couldn't see the mulch anyway, and I don't think it really made much of a difference at all. So I'm not going to be buying a bunch of bags of mulch. I'll probably just get like one, and then any plants that need a little bit of extra coverage or where mulch can be helpful, I'll mulch those, but I'm definitely not going to mulch all of my raised beds or anything like that because again, the plants start to grow in so quickly you can't even see it anyway, so it wasn't really what I was expecting when I was buying all of that mulch. So if I can save some money and not have to do all that, that'll be great. Also, something that I'm hoping I won't have to do is buy many containers. So I pretty much have all of the containers I can fit. So it'll be nice to just kind of spend my budget on plants and not necessarily more containers for those plants. But again, I will probably pick up a container or two, especially when the garden centers around here have some sales. But I feel pretty set as far as I have enough space to grow the things I want, but aren't those always famous last words in the garden? So we'll see how that goes too, but it is nice just to kind of have that whole basic structure and setup. Similarly, I'm hoping I won't have to buy as many bags of potting soil because I had most of the containers last year. I leave the soil in the containers. You probably saw the video I did on how I refresh my raised beds and containers. So any soil that is from the previous year is still in them, and then I'll just add a little bit more soil to kind of freshen them up and top them off. But that'll be great because one, again, not having to spend as much money on soil this year, and two, not having to carry the bags up. I just carried my first bag of potting soil up a few days ago, and I don't know if the bag is getting heavier or I am just getting weaker from winter, but it was harder than I remember. So obviously, live in Chicago, narrow, tall spaces. Basically anything we bring in has to go up a couple flights of stairs, so it'll be nice not to have to carry as much up the flights of stairs this year. So I think that is everything in terms of the things I know I'm doing differently this year. I'm sure there will be some other stuff that kind of pops up, and I will be taking you along with me through my garden journey this year. But like I said earlier, if there's anything that you kind of feel like a shift or things that you're changing in your garden for this year, let me know in the comments below, because I always find it interesting to kind of see what people are focusing on in their gardens. So let me know, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.